now is I'm going to hit the record button, and I am super excited about this topic today because it's a little known resource that's been out there for a while that is starting to get traction, and it's continuing care at home. And so today we've got a panel of 3 experts and providers that are going to open our eyes up to what this model is all about. And we're really excited to make this a live and interactive discussion. So if you've got any questions, we're excited to field them. But let's start first by welcoming our panel to the stage, and let's get to know them a little bit better. So, all right, we've got, and Dee, I've known you for years, but I'm going to have you pronounce your last name just so that I don't mess it up.
Oh, sure. It's Dee Pekruhn, and I've always told people, thanks to a colleague who thought of this years ago, like a chicken pecks and runs. Pekruhn.
Pekruhn. Okay, I'll never mess it up again. So we've got Dee Pekruhn from LeadingAge. We've got Lindsay Hutter from Goodwin House Incorporated, which runs Goodwin House at Home, and we got Arnold Eppel, who's with the Wesley, which is a proposed continuing care at home program that's coming in Maryland. Let me kind of go around and let's first get to know each of you a little bit better, and then we're going to dive into this topic. So Dee, I'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your career path and what led to your current role at LeadingAge.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, my career path started in the Girl Scouts years ago. I fell in love with working in aging services as a volunteer in nursing homes in Pennsylvania, and then in college. And then out of school, I discovered this entire field that I didn't even know existed. And that's how I got started. I worked at several different CCRCs in Virginia, including Goodwin House, which has always been near and dear to my heart, and great to be reconnected again with Goodwin House today and Lindsay. So now I'm at LeadingAge. Now I work as the Director of Life Plan Community Services and Policy.
And under your umbrella is this this continuing care at home model, correct?
It is now.
All right, excellent. Well, we're going to get back to you shortly here, but let's meet Lindsay Hutter, who's with Goodwin House Incorporated, which runs Goodwin House at Home. Lindsay, tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, thank you, Steve. And I'm going to take a cue from Dee. When people ask about my last name, my father would always say it's Butter with an H. So that's my my answer to your name explanation there. My background is varied. I started off working for a global trade association in strategy and communications, went to work for a global communications consultancy and did strategy and communications, and actually was on the first founding board of Goodwin House at Home, and then stepped down from that position when Goodwin House Incorporated recruited me to take the role that I currently have, which is Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer. And delighted to be a member of the leadership team that supports Goodwin House at Home, which was founded in 2014.
Great, excellent. And now, last but definitely not least, is my friend Arnold Eppel. And Arnold, your resume is long and varied, so we need the Cliff Notes version.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks for hosting this seminar today, because this is a really important topic, especially during COVID and the desire for folks to really want to age in place. It's pretty much my whole background of where I've come from. But I've run 2 departments of aging, one in Baltimore County and one in Baltimore City. I've run a for-profit residential setting of around 280 units. I've also operated Catholic Charities Senior Division, which is nursing homes, assisted living, and HUD buildings. Worked for the State Department of Aging for about a year and a half. Unfortunately, I lost my mom during COVID, and this program is near and dear to my heart, trying to keep folks out of institutional settings. And I think that it's time for a program like Continuing Care at Home to come about in Maryland. So that's why I joined Wesley.
I love it. All right. So Dee, delighted that we've got a global leader like LeadingAge involved with this. I'm assuming that you can sort of give us a macro level view of continuing care at home, and then Lindsay and Arnold can talk a little bit about how their programs are set up or how they're going to be set up. So I think you've got a PowerPoint that you wanted to share. Feel free to plop that on there. And then I'm just going to remind the audience to feel free to ask questions at any point, and we will do our best to get to those.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks for the invitation. This happens to be one of my favorite topics and favorite programs to not only talk about, but learn about. I say that because it is such an emerging model of delivery of services and care. And I think one that is going to become a big part of the future for life plan communities, continuing care, retirement communities, and other organizations. So I will just do kind of a high level overview. And there's a lot of pieces to this that keep changing as we go. And I think that's one of the more exciting things about continuing care at home. So I'll touch on each of these areas just briefly, its history, how it works, how it's staffed, the financial model. And then for anybody out there who's looking to get started, certainly you're going to learn a lot from Lindsay and Arnold today as well. But what does that mean if you wanted to start a program like continuing care at home? So continuing care at home is really designed for people who want to continue to age in place in the community, and perhaps down the road someday are looking to have an affiliation with an established organization that can offer healthcare in the future. But for the time being, they have their place in the community at home, and they want to see how different services can be brought in a way that suits their lifestyle and promotes their autonomy and independence as they go. So what is continuing care at home and what is it not? And I think it's important to differentiate. It is usually, not always, but usually an insurance product, and it has affiliated service fees. There is a service and care coordination component, usually not always, but affiliated with a bricks and mortar provider like Goodwin House or like others in the calliope of programs that we have across the country. It absolutely promotes aging in place with independence and fostering that for each individual served. There's support available for both independent and activities of daily living, from everything from housekeeping to maintenance, yard work, personal care. The whole spectrum can be available. Here's some examples that might be taken advantage of members of a continuing care at home program. So what is it not? I think it's really important to differentiate it, because you will see that at home designation used for a lot of different types of services that people can receive in their home, but they are not all continuing care at home. Here's two examples right off the bat. It is not purely a home health or home care company, and those two in and of themselves are different from one another. Yes, the continuing care at home programs can bring in services to the home that are home care or that are home health, but the continuing care at home organization is not a standalone home health or home care company. Most often those services are brought in from another affiliated organization. It's also not a village model per se. The village model is where neighbors and friends, and sometimes with some formal organization, bring in services for each other and help each other with different chores and tasks. So continuing care at home is a much more formalized program than a village model might be. I like to stress this. I don't believe that continuing care at home is a competitor for the CCRC or for the life plan community. I think people who choose continuing care at home are a different customer altogether than those who choose to move into independent living in a life plan or a continuing care retirement community. And anybody can, argue that point with me, but I really think they're separate and distinct consumer bases for the most part. Last but not least, you might have heard of SNF at home or skilled nursing at home, which is another emerging model, very interesting model. There's been some recent Hill activity on this as well. That's paving the way for SNF at home, but that is different from continuing care at home. SNF at home is more of that acute care being brought in. It's a beefed up version. Maybe you could think of it that way, as a home health company. I'll pause for a second. Steve, any questions yet from the audience? Anything you wanted to jump in and add?
No, but thanks for doing that, because that's a great reminder that if you've got any questions, just type them in that Q&A box. Thanks a lot, Dee.
Absolutely. So how to get started? Here's just a brief history. There's an embedded link here. I know Steve will share the slides later. If you click on that Friends Life Care, it'll give you a lot of what I'm about to share with you. Started in Pennsylvania in 1985, supported by a health system and by one of the nation's first not-for-profit CCRCs, Folkways, also Pennsylvania-based. They received funds from Robert Wood Johnson and the Pew Charitable Trust. And essentially, this was a group of people who came together who wanted to form a network of services so they could age comfortably at home. It started by people who later patronized the service. And Friends Life Care remains one of the few programs that is not actually directly connected or affiliated in a formal, business fashion with a CCRC. And it's also one of the largest and most successful so far in the country. They started accepting clients in 1990. Now they have over 5,000 members served. This number changes. So approximately 33 with Arnold's program, perhaps 34. Sometimes you'll hear 37. It fluctuates. With the pandemic, we had, a couple come online. We had a couple that ceased to exist. So there's been some transition in that number. But in 18 states overall, most of them, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. If you haven't looked at it yet, LeadingAge and Ziegler have put out the LZ200. And they say that 10% roughly of the top 200 organizations in the country, not-for-profit, that serve older adults offer continuing care at home. And that number has changed from 11% last year. So hence my comment about the changing number of programs. How does it work? Again, just quickly, usually affiliated with a CCRC. It typically is an insurance model. It's like a type A life care contract. There are actuarial analyses that go into the development of the product and the way that it's marketed and set up with consumers. There is a careful screening. There's financial eligibility included there that to make sure as people are signing on as members, this will be a part of their ongoing financial future in terms of viability. There is a really dedicated, targeted marketing strategy needed for this model. And it's something that all the programs together, as I've been working with the group nationwide of continuing care at home organizations, there's a real marketing strategy and structure that is necessary. And we're continually working to educate the consumer about this product and why it's such a good fit for so many older adults. There's a variety of plans members can choose from. There's usually an entrance fee, service fees. And I mentioned that service care and coordination. A lot of times a focus on wellness and preventative care, preventative health, and so forth. And a lot of times there's an option to later move into an assisted living or nursing home portion of the affiliated organization as the person ages and their needs change. These are the usual staffing components. There's others, of course, other positions usually involved, but the core are right here. Your care coordinator and social worker do a lot of that direct consumer interaction on a regular basis, checking in, seeing how things are going, modifying services as they go along. And then the others, they're certainly a very important supportive role. So the financial model, I won't spend a lot of time here. Steve, what I'll do is there's an online resource if people want to learn more that I put together on this, if you want to get into the details of the financial model. But this gives you an overview idea of how it's usually structured. There's usually a great deal of plan variety, and as between members, there's a lot of variety too on what is offered. Some offer more of a membership style model, which doesn't include the insurance component, which essentially says, I can pay a certain amount a month, in my entrance fee up front and a certain amount a month to pay for that premium. And then down the road, I'll get some discounted, future care through the affiliated organization. There's those monthly fees that help cover the day-to-day expenses. There's a lot of a la carte choice. Again, very customizable to the individual. and to their lifestyle. So, and I think that's what makes it so appealing to so many older adults. There's also a lot of startup expenses involved. Again, this is aimed more towards those organizations looking at setting something up. And I'm sure Lindsay and Arnold will both say more about that. What I've heard typically is the startup period. If you're building such a program, it's about 5 to 7 years to break even. So you're a lot of upfront expenses and investment, and then later on you start to yield some balance out in your revenues that are brought in. How do we get started? So definitely find out how your state regulates CCAH. Every state is different. Maryland is in its evolution now. I'm sure Arnold will talk about that. Virginia is a little bit farther ahead. Pennsylvania. Some states don't have anything in place yet to really regulate CCAH. So it's an evolving case in some, and it makes it challenge, like in Washington state, for example, for programs to get started because they have to go through another avenue. So find out how your state does it. Talk with other established programs, do an environmental scan, bring in experts to help you evaluate from a legal, market, and actuarial perspective. There are 2 actuaries in the country that really specialize in this area, and that's AV PAL and Continuing Care Actuaries. Both are business partners of LeadingAge. And then there's a lot of resident education and ambassadorship that needs to happen. It's really important not to forget your residents as you're getting a program started, if you are an established CCRC, so that the residents are open and accepting of the integration of these new people that will potentially be a part of their lives and part of the community. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Steve, see if there's any questions, and look forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say.
This is great. That's probably the best overview that I've ever heard on this topic. And I remember, because we do a source book up in Philadelphia when the Friends program was being launched. So this is really exciting. So okay, let me just double check. No questions in the Q&A box. I'm just taking a peek at the chat there. So now I'm really excited let's dive in and learn about 2 programs that are in operation or about to be in operation. And Lindsay, tell us a little bit about, the vision for Goodwin House at Home and how it operates.
Thank you, Steve. Delighted to do that. And I want to echo the compliments to Dee on what was a very thorough presentation. It's a bit of a playbook. So it's a great resource that LeadingAge has developed, and I encourage everyone to obtain that and learn from it. So Goodwin House at Home. We saw the numbers that everyone sees, that as the boomer population was reaching retirement, they wanted to age in place. They wanted to age in home. And the most recent data that I've seen from AARP is that 87% of older adults 65 and up want to age in place as long as they can. I would also commend that in addition to the AARP research and data, others would take a look at the NIC data, the National Investment Center data. They published, it's now 2.5 years ago, fantastic body of research and work, which suggested that if the country, not only the field of senior living, not only healthcare, communities, and the financial markets and governments at all levels through policies, if they invested in the systems and structures to make aging in place at home, it would be a higher quality outcome overall for the population. And it would result in a lower cost level for older adults to age safely in the place of their choice. For Goodwin House at Home, when we launched the program in 2014, we did have to work at an advocacy capacity with the Commonwealth of Virginia to get the necessary approval. So Dee's right, you really do need to look at the regulatory structure. And we have learned most recently, as we've gained approval to support older adults that want to age in their home in the District of Columbia and market our service there, that governments don't necessarily know where to put a CCAH in their regulatory infrastructure. And so they a little bit kind of scratch their heads and say, well, is it under the Department of Health? Is it under the Department of Human Services? Is it under the Bureau of Insurance? Most cases it's going to come under the Bureau of Insurance because of that long-term care-like commitment that we make for the care and the financial coverages for the older adults. So again, you'll need to navigate that landscape as we did in Virginia. When we formed Goodwin House at Home, we had a binary mindset that older adults either wanted to age in their home and they would never enter a community, or they knew they wanted to move into a community at some point. And what we've learned on our journey is that there's a door number 3. And there are older adults who actually say, I'd like to live out my days as long as I could in my home. However, I think that there's a possibility I may want the option to move into a senior living community. Now, our program is agnostic for older adults that want to move into a community. They can move into another service provider's community, or they could move into a Goodwin House community. We've always been agnostic about that since the beginning of the program. What we did initiate about 18 months ago was something called the Bridge program. And we said, if a Goodwin House at Home member joins our organization, they're going to pay a membership fee, then they're going to pay their monthly fees. They're really part of the Goodwin House family. And we should give them some credit of that membership fee, their entrance fee, if you will, to use life plan community language, towards the entrance fee when they move into one of our life plan communities. And that's been a very popular feature that we added, again, just about, I'm going to say 4.5 years into Goodwin House at Home. So that's a quick overview. I would tell you that we've averaged about 30 to 40 members a year that join the program. At the same time, we also know that there are members that transition to their next life on our care. And that is, and I'm going to say it is mission success, because we've enabled 97% of our members to live out their lives in the home of their choice. That may have been the home that was their independent home. They may have made a choice to say, I'm ready now to move to a community, or I need to move to a community. And we've been able to support those choices for 97% of our members. We crested 200 members at the end of our last fiscal year, which ended in September, and that was a real milestone for us. And we've got goals that put us forward in Virginia and put us forward in the District of Columbia to bring this service to more older adults there. Steve, I'm going to hit the pause button because Arnold probably wants to speak, and I could go on for a long time, but I'll stop right there. Steve, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. Okay, we can definitely have more of a roundtable discussion here when Arnold is done. But Lindsay, you'd mentioned about 200 members. Dee, out of curiosity, what do you have any data on sort of the average membership of these types of organizations?
I would say anecdotally, yeah, I think Friends Life Care is one of the outliers I mentioned. They have over 5,000 served. Most programs that I hear from, I haven't actually tracked it myself, but most programs that I hear from are around Lindsay's numbers there, the 100 to 300 mark in terms of members. It depends on how long the program's been in existence as well, but that's pretty typical from what I hear.
Yeah. Okay, great. We got to be careful when we're talking about CCAH and the villages, but that sort of topic of, sort of more well-established villages and medium size and what have you, there's probably a similarity there as well. Okay, Arnold, let's dive into your program, and I'm going to be running your PowerPoint here for you. So all you got to do is just say next, and I'll advance the slides.
Thanks so much. So Dee, I think you did an excellent job trying to frame continuing care at home. And Lindsay, thanks for your sharing of the information as well at a local level. I think the greatest part about joining LeadingAge National was that this program does not really have a nationally recognized name. You know what I mean? It's not a CCRC. It's not assisted living. It's not a SNF. So the most important part of having National LeadingAge is really getting people to understand what this product is and name recognition, honestly. So I'll talk a little bit about the Wesley, which has been around since 1867 as a nonprofit. It began in the Methodist community, serving widows of those from the Civil War. It was set up for a building to help widows at the time. It merged back in 1930 and landed on Rogers Avenue in Mount Washington, Baltimore, and has set up a CCRC. And in 2008, it sold its operation. So it no longer has a bricks and mortar, but it's still serving older adults through grants and programs. So this was a great transition for the Wesley to jump in during this period of COVID. And, Dee mentioned people have come in during COVID and left during COVID. But the most important part is that it needs to evolve here in Baltimore, at least in the Maryland community. So Steve, if you would move on, we're going to be servicing Baltimore County and Baltimore City. It is, as Dee said, it's not, I don't see it as a competitor to CCRCs. It's the forgotten middle. It's those that can't afford those $500,000, $450,000 entrance fees, and the monthly costs that are high. And also, it doesn't require folks to move. It's a matter of, I remember running a long-term care community and mom and dad would come in, the children would be pushing mom and dad in, and mom and dad are backing out the best they could out of the independent living, assisted living. They didn't want to come. So this really provides opportunities to provide services in the home where people want to be, but at the same time, it houses folks that can't afford, and it doesn't require folks to move into the Medicaid or spend down the Medicaid funding. So it really is that aging baby boomer that's right in the middle. They don't have a lot of money, but they have enough money to take care of themselves and also plan for their future. So we hope that, we can serve that grouping. Steve, you want to move on? So, during COVID, and this is a key point, where do people really want to reside? The preference has not been in congregate living, and we're seeing that in your ILs, your ALs, the vacancies are there. I know, my old building is probably operating at 2/3, 66%, because people don't want to move into these large facilities necessarily at this time. So many of them were receiving their meals during COVID in their rooms. It's supposed to be about congregate living. And so this was a great opportunity for the Wesley to look at helping and the safety issues concerning post-pandemic and how we can get through this. AARP has their survey that shows over 75% of people want to live at home as long as possible. And we think a continuing care at home program can do that. And we're, providing some excerpts from a January 2021 article that came out relative to COVID-19 and what people really are interested in where they want to live. Steve, you want to move on? So this is, as Dee noted, the services that are involved typically in a continuing care at home program. This was from a white paper that you can find from Clifton Larson Allen. We've kind of put it together and said, what is the summary of the article? And the most important part is care coordination, is making sure that while this does have a long-term care insurance product piece, the care coordination up front is really important. That home inspection through a physical therapist, occupational therapist, who comes in and says, these are the changes you could make to live here forever. That annual physical accessing of not only amenities and services, but what's in the community out there. Do I know about lifelong learning and where those things are available? We have emergency response systems. Everyone in our program that as we move forward, once approved, we'll get a watch, which has fall protection, which is GPS. So if you're at the Giant shop, food shopping, and fall, there's gonna be an alert put out. We're looking at emergency personal care services, homemaker services, live-in services, meals, transportation, adult day program once in benefit under long-term care benefit. Adult days, as we all know, are having issues, trying to reopen up during this period. Assisted living and SNFs are still part of the program and they're eligible. But what's really cool about what Wesley's going to be doing is we're also going to include the family caregiver. Training of the family caregiver is in our proposal, as well as paying that family caregiver a minimum wage up to the maximum daily benefit that we're going to be offering through the Wesley program. So I think that this is the core services. Here is a map that notes about 31 through the alliance. We had an alliance before National LeadingAge came in to help, bring some more credibility and recognition of the program. And you can see where these continuing care at home programs are. This was presented at one of the conferences that LeadingAge held on continuing care at home. You can see one over in Hawaii, actually, in the far left bottom. But most of them are on the East Coast, but there are none in Maryland. So while at one point friends came into Maryland, they ended up not continuing the program here. Dee mentioned that these programs are typically regulated by insurance commissions. In Maryland, however, it's regulated through the Maryland Department of Aging. And so it's very stringent oversight to get one of these open and started. For good reasons, because of people investing money and making sure that they can get a return on their dollar if things didn't move forward. Here is this is a compendium of services that the state talks about in their new, every state Department of Aging has to have a state plan every 5 years submitted to obtain Older Americans Act funds, et cetera. And this is from which just came out from the 2022-2025 plan, 2 years off of cost of COVID, that create a compendium of long-term care service options and associated costs for options counseling by the MAP, which is your ADRC, your Adult Disability Resource Center, and expand the reach of Community for Life program. Well, we've done that in Maryland, and that Wesley is going to be working with the Community for Life program, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. But we are trying to become that compendium of actual care and additional new services in Maryland. This is where we're regulated, which was the COMAR 320202 regulations. You can keep going, Steve. This is the outline of how members move through the continuum. The most important part of this is the member eligible. So we've got to carefully screen eligibility for an individual. We have 6 assessments, in-home assessments, that we conduct to make sure a member is eligible, and they have to have their health well controlled. If they are living in assisted living or a SNF, they're not eligible. They have to be living at home or renting a home, and they have to be fairly healthy coming in. We know that's an important part for actuarial movement so that the program can fund everyone. We're going to be offering a lifetime membership agreement that everyone will sign. So whatever determination of the level they want, it'll be lifetime benefits. We'll put a care coordinator in, create a service plan, take a look at their home for safety. We'll do our initial services, which everyone will be eligible, will receive, which is the emergency pendant. We'll have a telephone and nurse program. We'll include also our Community for Life, which is a Maryland Department of Aging program that's been contracted out. In our case, it's with Broadmead and Keswick. And it does home maintenance services, some transportation services, et cetera. The long-term care benefits, once you are eligible for long-term care benefits under the IRC code, which is 2 activities of daily living and or severe dementia, cognitive impairment, you are eligible for all of our services, your lifetime benefit. In our case, our proposed benefits are $350 a day, $280 a day, or $150 a day. We do have participating providers for assisted living and for SNF. And so we've already worked out contracts with a number of Baltimore County, Baltimore City providers. And then we pay the benefits for a lifetime for an individual for whether it be home-based care, live-ins, whatever the member wants. You can move on, Steve. These are this is the base of the program. And it basically to make sure that a person stays well and can stay in the community, we give them a care coordinator, we do a care plan, we personalize that care plan, we send that occupational therapist in, so those changes can be made to the home if necessary. But those are at the cost of the vendor, or pardon me, are of the member. Once we have approved you and we put you in the plan, we offer the basic services. This is all proposed as we are not received yet our initial certificate of registration. We hope we are about 2 weeks out. We give you an emergency pendant, as I mentioned, the annual telephone nurse. We will be doing the Community for Life program, which is dwelling vetted vendors for home, community service navigation, and limited transportation and handyman services. Steve? This is our membership criteria. You have to be at least 60 years of age. This is our proposed program. Applicants must reside in Baltimore City or Baltimore County. After 1 year, by the way, these programs are portable. So if you were to move to Florida, the benefit moves with you. Applicants must be relatively good functional health coming in. No different than long-term care insurance. You can't buy a plan once you're out of, once you're not healthy, you won't be able to buy one. I also say this is a good program for people that forgot to buy that long-term care insurance plan. They didn't even know about it. They bought life insurance, didn't know what this was, thought Medicare and Medicaid paid for long-term care. We all know in the audience they don't. And the applicants must rent or own, and the applicants must meet income and financial requirements. And we've listed some of those below. And we have a non-refundable processing application fee as well. So to cover the cost, or some of the cost, not all of the cost of the assessment. Wesley at Home, you can turn to the next slide, Steve. And if people have questions, they're welcome to send an email or call us, and we can talk more. Hopefully that gave you a good analysis of what we're doing in Baltimore County. I know it's a mouthful, but as you know, as Lindsay knows, it's hard to explain this program. People have to have a Medicare Part A, B, D program in place or equivalent. They must have their health insurance set up, because we are not health insurance. We're more long-term care insurance with care coordination. Thanks.
I love it. Thank you, all three of you, for those overviews. They're amazing. And also, I'm going to change the settings in Q&A so everybody can see the
Steve, while you're doing that, I'm
Yep.
going to just jump in and share that largely our programs are similar. And I think that that's helpful because it builds greater understanding of the continuing care at home product. It's still deeply misunderstood. As Dee pointed out, a lot of people hear it as home care because of the at-home piece. We within Goodwin House have talked at length about renaming, repositioning, and again, broader conversation, I think, with LeadingAge to help us in that endeavor. Where we do have some distinctions with Goodwin House at Home and Arnold's product, we are 55 and up, and we have 5 different contract models. And then we do have the bridge program if a Goodwin House at Home member wishes to move into one of our communities. And what I would share is that the majority of Goodwin House at Home members that do move into a Goodwin House Life Plan community actually retain their Goodwin House at Home membership. And they do so for several reasons, one of which they find the most valuable is the personal care coordination. Each Goodwin House at Home member has a member services facilitator. That is their wellness life planning coach. And for older adults that may not have family in the region, they may be single, they may have no children, that individual is kind of a lifeline to them. And they know that it's 24/7. And so that's an interesting feature. Some people would think, oh, if you moved into a life plan community, you wouldn't retain your Goodwin House at Home membership because you'd get the benefits of the life plan community. Actually, the majority of our members do retain their membership.
Love it. Dee, I'm so glad you're on this call because she's been typing ferociously with some of the questions that have been coming in. But for those that are just listening, I want to go through some of the questions. You can see Dee's response, and I'll make sure that I cut and paste all of these on the recording page. But Bob Hoffman says, if somebody already has a good long-term care insurance policy, are these programs still necessary? Dee, if you want to sort of share some of the thoughts that you shared, and then Arnold and Lindsay, I'm sure this is a question that comes up for you all too.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm glad he asked it. And there's so many angles to come to that answer. Yes, absolutely still necessary, because people need services brought into their home. There is going to be a large number of folks who are for either individual autonomy reasons or financial restriction reasons, or both, are going to need to age in place in the community as we move forward. And a lot of the good work done by Nick and others on the middle market, leads us in that direction anyway. Yes, because people are going to need that service coordination piece. In the past, and alongside our continuing care at home programs, geriatric care managers have been doing essentially this type of thing for years on an individual basis. But even that is a really expensive and difficult to maintain individually. So there are some programs that will work with people who already have long-term care insurance, and let there be some overlap and interplay there. There's other member programs who don't do the insurance model at all, and it's just is a membership fees, a la carte structure where you don't pay that upfront entrance fee, you don't get the insurance product, but you can pay to play with some of the other services that can be brought into your home on an a la carte basis. No matter what, I think this product fills a really important gap in service delivery in our country. And to Arnold's point earlier, as well as some of what Lindsay was saying, there's that demographic of people who are going to need this, who maybe either don't envision themselves as residents of continuing care retirement communities and or just don't have the financial resources up front to do it. And this gets those services and programs brought in that also, by the way, they wouldn't be eligible for on an income qualifier level for assistance programs from the government and from states. So I definitely feel it's needed no matter what.
Great. And then Morris Klein actually has a good question here. Is the entrance fee non-refundable? What happens if you move outside the provider's coverage area? I think Arnold, you spoke a little bit about that, but yeah, that's a question that with life plan communities, people always have that question. Is it refundable?
So we have two plans that we'll be offering. It's non-refundable and 50% refundable, but it's a 50-month declining balance. So if in fact, God forbid, something happens in that first 3 years, you would certainly get back part of that refund, part of the entrance fee. So we offer two different plans. Obviously, with the 50% non-refundable plan, it's going to be a little more expensive on the membership fee, but you're getting half of it back. So that's how we've structured it. Everyone is structured a little differently, and it also depends on your age of when you enter. So the age is really important. The other question about long-term care insurance is long-term care insurance sometimes has 3 months, 6 months before you're eligible for service. What Wesley has proposed is that there is no preclusion period at all. And we offer a discount for folks that have a long-term care insurance policy, so to supplement your long-term care, continuing care at home is available.
Great. Lindsay, can you comment on how Goodwin House deals with long-term care insurance and the refundable entry fee?
Yes, majority of our members actually do have a long-term care insurance policy. And we ask that they retain that coverage because it can help depending on which of the 5 plans they choose. It may be a wraparound, or it may be some of the initial benefits that they receive after the first, on average, 90 days, because long-term care insurance doesn't kick in terms of the benefits for anywhere from 30 to 100 days. At Goodwin House at Home, our benefits kick in on day 1. But the long-term care insurance may be a wraparound component. So it really does depend on the older adult's situation, as well as their goals for their care and their goals for their financial assets and resources for the long term.
Excellent. Okay, I want to jump to Again, a great question from Jennifer Brown that Dee was able to type in some resources. But what Jennifer says is home care agencies across the region and the country cannot staff the demand for in-home care. How do the panelists envision filling the gap between the high demand for home-based services and the lack of labor to provide these services? And again, this could be a whole hour discussion, of which I think it should be an hour discussion. But I'd love your all's thoughts on that.
For Goodwin House at Home, we have preferred provider relationships, and we put to them the same high level of quality and due diligence that we have for our own organizations and services. So there is a vetting process that takes place. And at that point, they know that we're going to select from among that small group of home care providers and use them consistently and really treat it like an ongoing partnership and relationship. And that means that you're going to select a firm that is stronger and more reputable, because your members are expecting that they're going to get the same quality, in our case, the same quality of coverage they'd get if they lived at Goodwin House Alexandria or Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads. What we can share with you is during the pandemic, that's been a bit more of a challenge, because some of those agencies have been challenged around vaccine requirements, for example. And our members want to ensure that whoever's going to be coming in their home has been fully vaccinated. So we've had to adjust and put in place, if you will, new safety checklist to ensure that our members are receiving not only the quality of care, but the pandemic safety requirements that are important to them.
Great. Now, we've been talking about the insurance commission and all of that. A question came in: if this is insurance, is it sold by insurance agents? Like, that's a really good question. If the programs are regulated by the insurance commission, how is there any certification or licensing that way?
We've not experienced that in the Commonwealth or in the District of Columbia in terms of the sales professionals needing to have an insurance certification. And to my knowledge, we have never had anyone who is a prospect of the program want to have that level of certification. And I think that's because our sales team is very, very knowledgeable, and they know how the contracts that we offer line up against long-term care insurance. One other thing that Goodwin House at Home does, and Cynthia McCullough is our director of sales, and she's building all of her relationships with the financial advisors in this marketplace, because we encourage prospects who are considering the program to bring their financial advisors to the table, sit down, let's answer all the questions that they may have. We believe that the informed, well-advised older adult, by all of the various advisors and counselors they have in their life, that can be family members as well, they're going to make a better decision that's right for them. So we want that, if you will, 360 view in terms of the decision process and the advice and counsel that these prospects receive on Goodwin House at Home.
So Steve, in the Wesley's case, regulated by the Maryland Department of Aging, it's very stringent and actuarially mandated that we provide to anyone looking at this program all of our actuarial projections and how we see the program evolving. What's also very interesting, I've learned through this network, that these things don't grow that large. They grow to maybe 350 members. Friends out of Philadelphia is different because they have a whole different model. And so that's why you heard the number 5,000, but average 350, they grow 30 to 50 a year. But we suspect with the pandemic that we very well may see and this baby boom population change with this trajectory of number of folks, that this industry probably is going to take off because baby boomers have always changed the way industries operate. And I do think that as long as you maintain the smart work going into the program and working with certified financial planners as registered investment advisors and others is really important, so that they can see that this really does save money for a consumer if in fact they end up needing long-term care, and that the state regulates in Maryland that we have to provide them quarterly for the first 5 years, where we are, where our reserves are. So I think these programs are pretty, I know I can tell you in Maryland, they're certainly regulated very strongly.
Steve,
Great.
I tag on to that, that's similar to a life plan community, and what I know the Commonwealth of Virginia requires for us is a very exhaustive annual disclosure statement. And so our life plan communities have their disclosure statements, and Goodwin House at Home has its annual disclosure statement. And so that is available 24/7 should a prospect or a member want to have a copy of the current disclosure statement.
Great. Once again, I look at the count, the time here, and we are almost to the top of the hour. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to make some closing statements. I also want to sort of make sure to recognize the recent question that Bob threw in there, that says, does LeadingAge or any other agency have an evaluation of local providers? I get that question all the time. People want to say, hey, Steve, just tell me what the best assisted living is. And D, is LeadingAge looking to try to come up with something like that?
No, so LeadingAge is a membership organization of all different types of aging services providers. So we promote and advocate for the best interests of members across the continuum. So we don't do any kind of evaluative or ranking services. The LZ 200 that I mentioned is purely based on the size of the provider and the revenue and operational units that the providers have. It's not a qualitative measure. The closest I could recommend is CARF, that you may not be familiar with, and they do a voluntary accreditation process of different types of providers. They don't, as far as I know, accredit right now continuing care at home programs, but they do accredit CCRCs. And these are organizations that voluntarily submit their performance against a set of very rigorous best practices and standards from the field, from the industry, which I know certainly Goodwin House has been accredited for years by CARF as an example. So you might take a look at CARF, but to my knowledge, there's not similar for continuing care at home at this point. I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. So
Steve,
well,
there's a
yep.
question on the village movement that just came in, and if I can jump into this, we're a
yeah,
very big
let's see.
fan.
Okay, yeah, let me make sure that I read that for you, everybody, in case somebody's not on there. It says in the DC, Maryland area, there is a village movement. How does this coordinate with these volunteer organizations?
Very well, if the organizations are focused on the same mission, which is to support, honor, and uplift the lives of older adults. We are very grateful to the Village Network in Virginia and in the District of Columbia. There's some fantastic villages. We partner with them often. We, in fact, pay the local village membership fee for our Goodwin House at Home members. So we're in partnership with those organizations, not at all in competition. We're in collaboration. And we actually host joint events together. So you'll find Goodwin House Incorporated and Goodwin House at Home to be very big supporters of the Village Network.
Great. All right. Well, folks, this has been fantastic. These discussions just get me so charged up about the future of what's out there. And I really want to thank the audience for some great questions, and our panel members for some great information. Like I said, I think this is probably the best discussion on this topic that I've ever been involved with. And the thing that I'm really excited about for both Goodwin House and Arnold's program with the Wesley is I think, you know, when you're out there doing one program on an island in a region where, right, for the recent memory, the Goodwin House at Home has been the only program out there, is that when there's more than one program out there, it really helps with the validation of a concept and what have you. So I'm excited to hear good things about both your programs and what LeadingAge is doing. I'll give you guys, if anybody has any last words, otherwise we can wrap this up and I'll share the recording with everybody and contact info and all the great questions that Dee answered online too.
Steve, I'll offer one bit of experience, and that is to measure twice and cut once when it comes to what will be your contract benefits, your financial plan benefits. And we have 5 because we wanted to recognize all the different financial scenarios and long-term care insurance scenarios of older adults. And one of the things that we've learned along the way is that sometimes programs can offer not enough benefit that makes them not as competitive in the marketplace in terms of the appeal to a prospect. At the same time, at-home programs may have too rich a benefit structure, and the ROI is not there for the providing organization. So I really would encourage anyone that is considering an at-home program to not underestimate the amount of time and analysis that's important to do on the front end to get those financials right in terms of what your fees are and what your benefits are.
And Steve, if I could just chime in, I can tell you I've been working on this project with one other person, Jessica Novella, my colleague, and it's been almost a year that we've been working to get approved by the state because of all the planning, the regulatory, the SOPs, the making sure that we do our due diligence coming into the program with a good actuarial review and understanding what the community wants and needs. So it's not something that you're going to get done in 2 months and put one of these up and running in any state.
Great. Okay, folks, thanks again. And we will be talking to you soon.